Hello everyone, welcome back. Let's take a look at stocks for 3rd of Jan to 8th of Jan. So what we are looking at in the first week of trading. Well, let's start with DBS. DBS, as we look at this counter, last week we discussed the resistance for DBS is 32.70, and in these 2 days, DBS actually compromised the resistance and flirt above it before deciding to end 2021 below the resistance. As such, DBS formed a new resistance at around 32.80, and the uptrend remained largely intact. Now, if it can break out from this 32.80 resistance, it is likely to form another all-time high. Now, the very interesting thing is that OCBC and UOB hasn't touched their 2021 high. Let's take a look at their chart first. Now, OCBC, last week we talked about OCBC. When it stays above its 20-day MA, we see that it has a chance to retest its resistance at 11.49, and it duly have done so. So what we saw is that this resistance has held very well, and it pushed OCBC back towards its 20-day MA. However, the counter's chance to retest this resistance remains largely intact. Now, if it can retest this resistance at 11.49, it is likely to form a bullish action, and there might be a chance to break up from it to move towards its cluster of MA resistance over here as high as 11.70, which the 200-day MA resides. Now, UOB is at this resistance as well. It tested this 27.11 resistance, but only to be resisted. So what we need to see is that next week it retests this resistance at 27.11 or 27.19 to tell us that it is having a potential to break out and move towards its high at 28.18. Now, in between, there are some minor resistance or some channel of resistance to look out for, especially here. Let's highlight that. Okay, once it breaks out from there, there is a chance for it to get to 28.18. Now, in 2020, or rather in 2022, what is going to be the outlook for the bank? Now, based on the previous experience, in the interest rate increasing environment, typically the GDP does very well. So when that happens, the bank tend to goes up higher, because with higher interest rate, they tend to make more profit from their loan. So if this is still the same as nothing changed, then we shall see a bullish 2022 for the bank. Okay, so next, let's move on to the tech. Last week, I talked about UMS, and I mentioned that UMS has to break above 145, and it has a chance to retest 150 resistance, and it did. It went as high as 152. So the weekly chart looks fantastically well. So the challenge for UMS right now is to move to 154 resistance and ultimately break above this 156 level to continue its uptrend. So can it do so next week? So it'll be interesting for us to see if we retest 156 and pull back to a support level, and that will probably give you another opportunity to add on positions, or if not, enter a position. Now, IFAS has been going up, as I mentioned, that keep IFAS in your watch list, but it hasn't give me that sign for me to enter. So I can see that IFAS has been resisted by 850 resistance and its 50-day MA. So what we are looking next is that if there is a possible pullback to its MA support over here and rebound, this might be an opportunity for you to get into the stocks. And once it retests its resistance at 850, then it forms an inverse head and shoulder formation for it to break out towards the $9 level. So what we are looking at is a potential upward movement if it can form that formation, and the projected level or the projections is to 937. Okay, so we shall see what's going to happen next week for iFast. Next, we're going to talk about the Hourglass. This counter has been holding fairly well above its 50-day MA, and its resistance to break is 211. So once it breaks above 211, there is a good chance for it to continue to its next resistance at 230. Now let's take a look at AEM. AEM has moved up and start to consolidate over here. Of course, if you were to follow through last week, I mentioned that the weekly chart has a shooting star, and I need it to go into or trade or end the week at about 520 plus level, and it did. So it shows us some bullish strength over here, and if the bull strength continue, it shall break out above 529 and then retest 537 resistance, and thereafter we are going to look at an all-time high level, which I mentioned 540 was the projected target, but it could go beyond 540 if it can break out 537. Next, let's move to the US counter. Let's look at some of the big counters, mega counters in US. Let's start with Apple. Now, Apple went near its resistance at this 181 level, but it did not manage to break out from the resistance and pull back. So what we see is a slight pullback, and nicely done so. If it continue to move slightly lower tomorrow and retest the 20-day MA, we have a chance for the counter to rebound to retest 181. So if we have done so, pull back a little bit, move back to resistance, then we have a bullish formation, which may suggest more upward movement for Apple. Now, Tesla, as you can see from the chart over here, I have pre-plot this channel where Tesla has been trading, bouncing up and down within the channel. So you can see that it has the first high over here, the second lower high. Then recently it rebounded to test this upper trend line, then pull back. Okay, so in hindsight, we could have drawn this earlier and then seen the pullback. But then I would think that Tesla is doing a this short-term pullback, as the recent price action suggests this is a flag formation. Okay, let's plot this flag formation out. Over here, we have the arrow, which shows us strong rally and then a pullback with declining volume. And once it breaks out, then we probably look at another high for Tesla at around 1265. Okay. Now, if the channels continue where we don't see a breakout above this channel, then yeah, the lower channel points Tesla to 960, around 960 level. So let's see where Tesla will be heading to. Now, Lucid is a counter that many would think that it is going to be the next Tesla. And if you look at Lucid over here, it has been struggling in its rebound, and it is trading below its 50 and 20-day MA. So the good thing here is that MACD is trying to turn. Stochastic has turned up, and it needs a breakout above 42.71 or 74 in order to form a new trend. So will it be able to do so? Let's watch next week. Let's look at Meta. Last week we talked about Meta hitting its resistance at 352, and it did, and it started to pull back from the resistance back to its MA support. So this support is very important, as if it can hold above this support level and rebound back to this resistance, there might be a chance for it to break it this time around. So this resistance is pretty strong. 1, 2, 3, 4. So where Meta is going to be next week, holding above support level is fairly important. Next, let's move to Alibaba. Last week we talked about Alibaba. If we can break out, the projected level is around 142. It did break out over here, but Friday closing was slightly disappointing. Now, looking at such a chart movement, I want to relate to this kind of movements, which it happened before. So we have seen Baba rebounded over here, and then, after the strong rally, Baba tend to have some profit taking and close lower, which happened last Friday as well. And then it consolidated a bit and finally break out and rallied higher. So will this happen again over here? Well, I think many will be interested to find out and will be anxious to see that Baba can really break out and recover to hit higher. Coinbase, last week we mentioned a breakout may help the counter to retest 304 level, which is the projected level. But unfortunately, due to weakness in the crypto, BTC, we see Coinbase start to pull back. So maybe it has to get some rest before it can continue to move higher. Now, to replot the resistance for this counter, the counter has a new resistance at 281. And then the resistance here last week is still there at 290. So if it can form a base over here and rebound, then we may see it retest this resistance. Amazon was disappointing. It couldn't, trade past its resistance at 3485 and then start to pull back. But in fact, it only went as high as 3458, and this is not a very good sign for Amazon for the time being. So what we have to look out for is that if we retest this support and break down this support at 303, then we may see some more downward pressure for Amazon. So we got to look out for this major support over here if it tests it, right? So this is the these are the counters that we are looking at next week. So have a good week ahead, and hope for a wonderful closing towards the end of the week. Good day and goodbye.